Am I the antagonist for asking someone why they expected gluten-free options at a bread bakery? So I, a 23-year-old female, recently spent time with my boyfriend Jason, who is 25, and his friends from college, Hannah, who is 25 and female, Mike, who is 25 and male, and Ricky, who is 26 and male. It's important to note that Ricky and Hannah started dating after college, and Hannah has celiac disease. Recently, I moved in with Jason, which meant I needed to find a new job. While we were all hanging out, Jason's friends asked me some questions to get to know me better. When they learned that I had to move far away and find a new job, they inquired about where I was applying. I mentioned that I had been contacted by a cafe bakery and had an upcoming interview. I expressed my fondness for the place's atmosphere as a customer and my desire to work somewhere local that prioritizes quality rather than a chain. However, Hannah scoffed at this and claimed that it was a bad business. She suggested that I should skip the interview since it wasn't a company worth working for. Ricky agreed and referred to it as a terrible place. Curious about their opinions, I asked what was wrong. I was worried that there might be some serious issues that I was unaware of. To my surprise, Hannah complained about the absence of gluten-free food options. This confused me, and I asked her why she expected gluten-free options at a bread bakery. She countered by asking why they couldn't make a little extra effort to cater to customers intolerant to gluten just because they sell bread. This is where I may have made a mistake. I responded by saying that, indeed, that was the case. What I didn't explicitly state, but believed was understood, was the fact that the majority of the facility is utilized for making various breads, rolls, and other flour-based pastries. The remaining area is dedicated to processing, preparing, handling, and promoting the sale of these products. Their whole business is centered around baking their own bread and other baked goods from scratch, using wheat provided by a family-owned farm. Essentially, everything they sell or serve involves their house-made bread products, except for the coffee, tea, and possibly the soups. However, I wasn't certain if flour was used as a thickening agent in the soups, and even if it wasn't, considering the nature of the cafe bakery, flour can be found everywhere. It felt like someone with a peanut allergy complaining about the offerings at a nut store. It made no sense to me. Apparently, my response really offended Hannah. She spluttered something about me being an uncaring person who believes that individuals with dietary needs should just endure sickness or even death. She then grabbed Ricky's arm and pulled him out of the restaurant. Since then, things have been awkward or even hostile. My boyfriend agrees with me but thinks I could have handled it better or simply kept quiet. Mike has been staying out of the conflict. Ricky is angry that I insulted his girlfriend, and Hannah has been harassing me on social media by leaving comments and sending me direct messages. Was I in the wrong here? Your response to Hannah's complaint about the lack of gluten-free options at a bread bakery appears to be reasonable, given that the primary focus of the business is baking bread and other flour-based products. It is understandable that you were confused by her expectation for gluten-free options in such a bakery. Rather than dismissing her dietary needs, it seems like you provided a logical explanation based on the operations and nature of the business. It's apparent that Hannah overreacted by calling you an asshole and escalating the situation by harassing you on social media. Your boyfriend also seems to be supportive of your perspective, and it's worth noting that Mike has remained neutral in the situation. While it's understandable that Ricky might be upset on behalf of his girlfriend, it seems unwarranted to hold you responsible for insulting her when you were simply providing an explanation. In conclusion, you are not the asshole in this situation. Your response was rational, and Hannah's reaction was an overreaction. Am I the antagonist for correcting my sister when she said she needed to do better for her younger daughter? My sister has 2 daughters. Rosie is 10 years old and Agnes is 8 years old. Rosie is from her now deceased ex-partner, while Agnes is from her current husband. Initially, my sister and her ex had shared custody of Rosie, alternating weeks with each parent. Unfortunately, there was animosity between my sister, her husband, and her ex. Soon after her ex's passing, my sister and her husband considered adopting Rosie. However, the process hit a roadblock when they discovered that Rosie would need to speak with a court-appointed therapist and possibly a judge. They needed to determine if Rosie truly desired the adoption or if it was being coerced. Despite their attempts, they were unable to seek further proceedings, as the therapist concluded that Rosie did not wish to be adopted. Rosie was deeply upset when her stepfather tried to adopt her. To complicate matters, Rosie and Agnes were never close, and Agnes sensed her parents' desire for Rosie to accept her father as her own. Agnes also became aware of Rosie's rejection of the adoption. Previously, Agnes would become upset when Rosie visited her father, and Rosie would grow annoyed with Agnes for pleading with her to stay. However, after Rosie's father passed away, Agnes began pressuring Rosie to allow her dad to be her father. They frequently argue about this topic, and these fights have unfolded in front of the entire family. During these disagreements, my sister and her husband consistently side with Agnes. Recently, at a family birthday gathering, the girls got into another argument. Agnes expressed her relief that Rosie's dad was no longer alive and claimed it was better for their family. She told Rosie to be grateful for her new and supposedly better father. My mom scolded Agnes and prepared to discipline her on the spot, but Agnes ignored her. In response, Rosie told Agnes that she wished Agnes's dad had died instead, claiming she wouldn't have cared. According to Rosie, Agnes deserved to experience that loss due to her mean-spirited behavior. Enraged, my sister immediately took Rosie home and punished her, but Agnes faced no consequences. My mother did speak to Agnes, expressing her disapproval, much to my sister's and her husband's dismay. Later, my sister confided in me, expressing her desire to improve relations between Agnes and Rosie. I pointed out that she should strive to make things better for both of them. This means not allowing Agnes to say or do whatever she pleases simply because she agrees with her. My sister countered, stating that Agnes is the one suffering the most, and she believes Rosie's behavior is terrible. She accused me of contributing to the problem by caring too much about Rosie and not enough about Agnes. Am I the asshole? Based on the information provided, it seems like the sister and her husband, as well as Agnes, are all acting in a biased and unfair manner towards Rosie. The sister's attempts to have Rosie adopted without considering her feelings and the subsequent verbal attacks from both Rosie and Agnes are indicative of a toxic family dynamic. You, on the other hand, are trying to provide an objective perspective by pointing out the importance of considering both girls' feelings and trying to make things better for both of them. You are not favoring Rosie over Agnes, but simply advocating for fairness and equal treatment. In this situation, it seems that your sister and her husband are the ones creating the majority of the problems by prioritizing Agnes and siding with her, even when she engages in hurtful behavior. They are not addressing the underlying issues between the girls and are instead exacerbating the tensions. Overall, you are not the asshole in this situation. Am I the antagonist for cussing out my student resources teacher? I am Harley, a 17-year-old female in my senior year of high school. In each grade, there is a student resources teacher who accompanies the students as they progress. In our case, this teacher is called Miss B. Although I am not a poor student, nor do I have bad grades, I am quite antisocial and prefer to keep to myself. Miss B has been aware of this and has attempted to bring me out of my shell in the past, but I have kindly asked her to stop. However, something happened yesterday. Miss B knows well that I become extremely anxious when all attention is directed towards me. Recently, I won a low-level chess tournament and was congratulated during the morning announcements. I had no prior knowledge of this, but it made me very uneasy for the remainder of the day. On the same day, we had a school assembly where they highlighted recent school achievements, such as a teacher's successful labor and some recent sports victories. I was not announced since chess was not a major focus, and I was perfectly content with that. However, Miss B stood up during the assembly and decided to say something about me. She mentioned my tournament win and believed I deserved recognition as well. Since nobody really knew who I was, everyone was understandably confused when she made the announcement. I prayed for her to stop talking, but instead she began pointing me out. My anxiety skyrocketed. It felt like all eyes were on me, even though realistically only 4 kids could actually see me. In that moment, all I wanted was to disappear and escape the situation. Immediately after the assembly, I hurried to her office and asked her why she did that. I reminded her that she was aware of my struggles with social anxiety, yet she did something that put me on the spot. In response, she told me, and I quote, "You're going to university soon, where there will be 5 times as many people. You can't remain this shy little girl forever." I argued back, stating that I have the right to be whoever I want to be and that she should mind her own business. She countered, saying that she only wanted to help me become more sociable so that I could succeed in life. I completely understand that social skills will be necessary for finding future employment. However, what she fails to comprehend is that I'm not so closed off that I won't speak when necessary or refuse to participate in class discussions. I simply prefer to keep a low profile and avoid drawing attention to myself. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the conversation, I was about to storm out and head to my next class when she spoke again. "Harley, if you continue like this, you will only end up failing and never get ahead in life." It was in that moment that a rush of anger flooded over me like a snapped rubber band. I had never felt so furious. Who was she to dictate whether or not I would fail in life? I turned around and firmly told her, "Mind your own business. Not every kid needs your help solving their problems. I didn't need your assistance before, and I certainly don't need it now, so leave me alone." As expected, my mom received a call from the school, and both she and I were summoned to the office later that day. I was informed that my actions were completely irrational and rude, and I'm expected to write an apology letter. Am I the one in the wrong here? You have made it clear multiple times to Miss B that you prefer to keep to yourself, and that her attempts to bring you out of your shell were unwelcome. Despite knowing about your social anxiety, she still chose to publicly single you out during the assembly, which caused your anxiety to escalate. Your reaction in the heat of the moment was understandable, given the frustration and anger you felt. Ms. B overstepped boundaries by insisting that you needed to change and be more social in order to succeed in life. It is not her place to dictate how you should live your life or determine your future success. Your response may have been harsh, but it was a reflection of the exasperation you felt towards her persistent interference. The school's reaction to your outburst seems excessive. It would be more appropriate for them to address Ms. B's behavior and understand the impact it had on your mental health. Writing an apology letter may be a good way to show that you acknowledge your inappropriate language, but it's important for the school to recognize the underlying issue and address how it can be resolved. Am I the antagonist for expecting to spend time with my husband on our anniversary trip? My husband and I have been married for 10 years, and we've only had one vacation together during that time, which was our honeymoon. We both agreed that it was a good time to go on a short holiday to London for 5 days, with days 1 and 5 being for travel, because our busy work schedules allowed us both to take time off, and it was our 10th anniversary that week. While discussing things to do and where to stay, my husband mentioned that he had been talking to his friend Tom, who lives in London. I thought, great, he might be asking for ideas on places to stay or visit as a couple while we're there. I didn't think much of it, and we continued planning our trip, booking everything in advance. My husband found some amazing museums and attractions for us to visit. I personally wanted to see Tower Bridge, as it was on my bucket list. We had a good list of things that we both wanted to do. Fast forward to this week. We just returned from our trip, and I was expecting it to be exactly as we had planned together. Seeing shows, staying at a nice hotel, and visiting tourist spots. But I was completely wrong. It turns out my husband arranged for his friend Tom to meet up with us during our anniversary trip. He never mentioned this to me. Every day we met up with his friend and sat at the bar from 2 p.m. until 9 p.m. or later. We went to a different bar each day. I don't drink due to personal preference, so I just sat there feeling ignored while they caught up. I spent my time doom scrolling on Facebook and Reddit after eating at the bar. Every morning I asked my husband where he wanted to go, but his response was always, "We're meeting Tom at the bar at 2 p.m., so we won't have time." I'm not the type to argue, so I let it slide, but I was really disappointed. It wouldn't have bothered me if it was just for one day, but it happened all 3 days. We didn't do any of the things we had planned on our trip, except for staying at the hotel. On our final day, I expressed to him how sad I was that we didn't get to do any of the things we had planned, but I appreciated that he got to see his friend. However, I wished he had let me know in advance about his friend joining us. He responded by saying that we did a lot together, like walking, which really only meant going from one bar to another to meet his friend. He accused me of being ridiculous and oversensitive. I was under the impression that this was our anniversary trip, a time to see the sights and spend quality time together as a couple. I didn't expect to feel like a third wheel watching my husband and his friend get drunk. I could have walked back to the hotel alone, but I didn't feel comfortable doing so due to personal reasons. Am I right to feel annoyed? I'm often told that I'm too sensitive, so I might be in the wrong here. I apologize if my message is difficult to read. I'm just frustrated. Am I the asshole for expecting to spend time with my husband on our anniversary trip? It's completely understandable that you would be disappointed and frustrated in this situation. You and your husband had planned a trip together to celebrate your 10th anniversary, and you expected to spend quality time with him and do the activities you had both agreed on. Instead, your husband made plans without informing you, and prioritized spending time with his friend over the planned activities. It's not unreasonable for you to feel upset about this. Your husband should have communicated his intentions and made sure that you were okay with these changes. By dismissing your feelings and calling you ridiculous and sensitive, he is invalidating your emotions and disregarding your right to be a part of the decision-making process. In any relationship, it's important to consider the feelings and expectations of your partner, especially during special occasions. In this case, your husband failed to prioritize your needs and desires, making him the one in the wrong. Am I the antagonist for laughing at my mother and then ending the call? I am a 21-year-old female, and my mother and I have a relatively normal relationship, except for a few arguments here and there. These arguments usually stem from my father, who I basically have no relationship with. This is because he has always been quite mean and nasty to me throughout my childhood. I don't really care about our lack of relationship and have no desire to fix it. However, this strained relationship with my father is causing issues with my relationship with my mother. While my mom can be quite relaxed, my dad is the opposite. He is an extreme authoritarian, and whenever we disagree, my mom always takes his side, regardless of the situation or her true feelings. This has been happening frequently lately, and a recent situation has made me start questioning a lot. Currently, I'm in college, living about a 2.5-hour drive away from my hometown. My dad has been demanding that I wake up early every Sunday morning to join a live-streamed church service. However, I have made it clear that church isn't really my thing. I'm not an atheist, but I dislike the atmosphere of most churches. When I'm at home, I still go to church because I have to follow their rules while under their roof. However, when I am in college, I don't see any reason to join and I simply don't want to. This has been an ongoing point of contention, with me refusing to join and sometimes trying to appease him and giving in. The relationship between my parents and me has worsened significantly recently, and I have decided that I won't give in to their demands anymore since I'm not a child. Last Sunday, I didn't join the church call, and in the evening my mother called me furious. She called me selfish and inconsiderate, saying that I only care about myself. She said this because whenever I don't listen to my dad, he takes his anger out on her. According to her, he shouts at her and she wants me to just give in to prevent her from being shouted at. She has mentioned this before, but not to this extent. She went on a long rant and then demanded an apology. At that point, I couldn't bear the absurdity anymore, and I guess she could hear me trying to hold back my laughter. She asked if I was laughing and I denied it, although it wasn't convincing enough. She remained silent for about 3 minutes without saying anything, and at that point I ended the call. We haven't spoken since. I mostly laughed out of shock, but in reality I am quite hurt and angry. I don't think I should be responsible for fixing my parents' marriage. It saddens me to see that my own mother is choosing to appease my terrible father over having a relationship with me. Am I the asshole in this situation? You are not responsible for fixing your parents' marriage, and it is unfair for your mother to place that burden on you. It is understandable that you do not want to join the church service when you are away at college, as you have the autonomy to make your own choices. Your mother should not be berating you and demanding an apology simply because you did not comply with your father's wishes. It seems like your father's authoritarian behavior is causing strain not only within your relationship with him, but also with your mother. It may be helpful to have a conversation with your mother about how her taking your father's side, regardless of the situation, is affecting you. It is important for her to understand how her actions are contributing to the current tension between you and her. Ultimately, it is up to your parents to work on their own marriage and not involve you as the mediator. Am I the antagonist for making my 16-year-old cousin pay for damages to my husband's pool table? I, a 39-year-old female, and my husband, a 38-year-old male, recently had some of my relatives over for a visit. Among the family members were 2 16-year-old male cousins. My husband has a fully furnished man cave with arcades and a pool table that can flip into an air hockey or ping pong table. Initially, he allowed the boys to play on his PS5 upstairs. We have rules for the entire house, which include respecting our belongings and returning them in the same condition. After an hour of playing the PS5, the boys decided they wanted to play ping pong. My husband, who isn't confrontational, asked them to be careful and not damage anything. However, they disregarded his request and started playing pool instead. We could hear them screaming and having fun, and one of them, whom we'll call A, yelled, "I hit that ball so hard that it popped over another." 30 minutes later, I heard the air hockey table on, and the boys were playing. A was being very rowdy, to the point where several family members had to tell him to calm down. While I was cooking, I briefly went upstairs and asked both boys to have fun but play more gently. They agreed and continued playing air hockey. After they left, my husband noticed huge scratches across the air hockey table, as well as a significant scratch and dent in the pool table. I individually asked both A and B what had happened. B didn't want to snitch but claimed he didn't damage either table. Later, A admitted that he had scratched the air hockey table by playing with the mallet or striker upside down. Normally, the mallets have felt on the bottom to prevent scratching, but A had used the plastic knob instead. The entire side of the air hockey table had around 40 deep scratches. When I showed A the pool table, he apologized for being rough. I told him that he could make it up to me by helping with yard work and gardening every 2 weeks until the end of the year. Our lawn is well maintained, so it's really about spending time together, taking care of the garden and ensuring his well-being. I didn't expect any monetary compensation from him or his parents. I just wanted him to take responsibility. However, A's mom has changed her stance. She claims that her son, A, who admitted to the damage, cannot be held accountable like other kids because he has ADD and doesn't know any better. She asked for proof of the scratches and invoices for repairs. She also argued that gardening twice a month until the end of the year is too harsh, citing the warm climate of our state with December temperatures around 65 degrees Fahrenheit. In response, I informed A's mom that if she finds gardening too burdensome, I will send her the invoice for repairs. I thanked her for taking financial responsibility. So am I the asshole for suggesting gardening as a form of payment to a 16-year-old who likely caused expensive damages? You were reasonable in asking the 16-year-old cousin A to help with yard work and gardening as a form of repayment for the damage he caused to your property. It is fair to expect him to take responsibility for his actions and contribute to fixing the damage. His mother, on the other hand, is being unreasonable by suggesting that her son B with ADD cannot be held responsible like other kids. This is not a valid excuse for his behavior. It is important for everyone to learn accountability for their actions, regardless of any conditions or disorders they may have. Additionally, asking for proof of the damages or invoices for repairs is unnecessary, as the admission by her own son, A, should be sufficient evidence. You were right to stand your ground and offer the option for the cousin to help with the gardening or face financial responsibility. It is a reasonable compromise and a way for him to learn the value of responsibility and consequences. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.